Okay, so for my physics class, we were asked to build a paper roller coaster using nothing but paper. Now, we were allowed to use various types of paper, and the only thing that could not be paper was the base. The base was allowed to be wood, but nothing else that was an integral part of the roller coaster was allowed to be wood or any other material other than paper. The design behind my roller coaster is fairly simple. I'm calling it the Swamp Monster. And for the simple reason that I used a lot of green in my design and the decoration and ornamentation of the roller coaster, I think it fits well for this roller coaster. And there are a few cool details that I'll explain more towards the end of this. But for right now, let's look at the physics behind this. The physics behind the roller coaster are fairly simple. It's a gravity-fed roller coaster, meaning that it doesn't rely on any mechanical parts, any springs, electricity, magnets, nothing like that. It simply relies on gravity to propel the marble, which would normally be a roller coaster cart. However, we were just making one out of paper, so we couldn't do that. So we're simply using a marble. This is like I said, a gravity-fed coaster, and the marble has a mass of, well, the one that I have has a mass of about 5 grams. And that means that, well, I guess that is the average weight for most glass marbles. But anyways, moving on from there, the design of my roller coaster is fairly simple. There's a long drop at the beginning in order to gain enough kinetic energy and velocity to make it through the rest of the coaster. The kinetic energy gained in the first drop allows the marble to spin through the loop at the bottom of the drop, and then the kinetic energy gained in the loop also assists the marble in getting over the camelback or the hump, which in this case I've had several problems with. I probably should have used a more flexible paper at this point because there have been some issues with the coaster tilting in the little dip afterwards on the camelback and the marble falling out of the track. However, I was able to fix that with a simple rolled paper support beam. I'll get to those in a second, but from there, the marble goes from the small dip on the camelback into the funnel. Now, the funnel is the part that takes the longest amount of time on this roller coaster, simply because the funnel has to spin, or the marble, has to spin around the funnel multiple times until it goes to the center, where it then drops through to the bottom into another track below. I used a cardboard paper tube as a support base for this. However, there is a smaller cardstock paper tube inside of the funnel that feeds the marble into the bottom track below. Now, when the marble falls through the funnel into the bottom track, it then comes out of the tower, pillar, something. I'm not sure what, but we'll just call it the tower. It comes out of the tower through a straightaway track that is slightly angled downwards. Now, that is very important to have because if it were to be level, the marble would have no possibility of gaining any more kinetic energy and would just lay stagnant on the track. We can't have that. This has to move until the very end. So from there, it goes down the straightaway track into a wide turn. This wide turn then loops around a mid-support beam, which is also made from a wrapping paper tube, and then goes down into a small spiral, which then goes into another wide turn going the opposite direction. This was a kind of difficult part to work around, as the marble didn't really want to go the opposite way. It wanted to continue on its current path, I guess. But I was able to make it so that the marble would go down the track consistently. There is a small slowing point on there where the marble moves a little bit slower than it has been. However, I've never had it stop on the wide track where it turns the opposite way. Thankfully. Thankfully, I didn't mess that one up. I had to do this several times in order to get it to work correctly, but eventually, with enough perseverance and a little bit of aggravation, I was able to engineer it so that it would work properly. And from that wide turn in the opposite direction, it goes into another spiral that has a similar yet different turn style than the first spiral. From there, on the first spiral, it just drops down into a little catch bucket, I guess. That is a small part of a Christmas paper tube that I cut and decorated with not wrapping paper, but tissue paper. The bases of the main support pillars are also covered with tissue paper, which I secured with hot glue. I forgot to go over this. The only adhesives we were allowed to use were tape and glue. However, it did not specify what kinds of tape and what kinds of glue, so I have used several. I've used normal Elmer's glue sticks. I've used hot glue on the more parts that need to be a little bit more rigid. I used hot glue at the bases of the support beams in order to give them some more stability. And the support beams that I have are actually just rolled paper. Now, I know that's going to sound a little bit awkward, but it's really just very simple. I took a sheet of cardstock paper and attached it to an old broken arrow shaft with a little bit of hot glue. I then used the arrow shaft to roll the paper in a circular motion so that it rolled up very tightly and got very structurally sound, and it has done well to support the rest of the roller coaster. Now, I did not leave the arrow inside. Once I had successfully rolled the paper and sealed the outside with more hot glue, I made it so that I would be able to remove the arrow from inside of the paper tube that I just wrapped, therefore abiding by the rules of the project, saying that everything has to be paper except for the base. The base was allowed to be wood, but nothing else that was an integral part of the coaster could be any other material. Now, my one problem with this is my decorations. I am afraid that, well, all of my decorations are paper, but there are certain ornamentation parts that aren't. They have nothing to do with the structural integrity of the coaster. They're simply there for decoration and visual appeal. Now, the thing that I was talking about is I would be placing either a top of a water bottle with a sealed lid in the tops of the main pillars and the middle pillar, and putting a small piece of dry ice in them. When it was time to actually present the roller coaster, I would then fill the dry ice cups with water, thus creating a fog-like effect, enhancing the swamp monster theme of this roller coaster. But other than that, everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. Gravity-fed roller coaster. Isaac Newton would be proud, and thank you all for watching.